Marcus Ken stands at the edge of Prospect Ridge, a desolate plateau in northern Canada, where the research station he manages monitors climate data for the Global Environmental Council. The isolation suits him. At 52, he's spent the last decade avoiding the complications of Earth's crowded cities and the equally crowded expectations of his estranged family. His colleagues rotate through the station every 3 months, but Marcus has made this frozen nowhere his permanent home, content to document the slow death of Arctic ice and send reports that no one reads with particular urgency. The work is repetitive, which is precisely what he needs after a career spent chasing acclaim in exoplanet research, a pursuit that burned him out and left him professionally unremarkable and personally hollow. The morning starts like any other coffee, in the dim light of the station's observation deck, thermal suit checked, oxygen reserves verified. Marcus is 60 minutes into his external survey when the thermal imaging system on his wrist monitor alerts him unusual heat signatures approximately 2 kilometers northeast of the station. Such anomalies are common this time of year. Sometimes it's geothermal activity, sometimes equipment left behind by previous expeditions. Something about the pattern triggers curiosity, a feeling Marcus hasn't genuinely experienced in years. He should radio back to the station, should follow protocol, should stay within designated boundaries. Instead, he bundles into an emergency sled and heads toward the coordinates. What he discovers in a sheltered valley defies every explanation his scientific training offers. 3 small beings, approximately 1 meter tall, huddled beneath a makeshift shelter of crystallized organic matter that resembles neither ice nor any mineral formation he recognizes. Their bodies emit the heat signature his monitor detected, their skin rippling with bioluminescent patterns that cycle through colors: deep blues, silvers, purples. As if they're communicating through light, each being appears identical to the others, with elongated limbs, translucent membranes stretched between their fingers, and enormous liquid eyes that fix on Marcus with what he can only describe as desperate intelligence. They are not human. They are not any species cataloged in xenobiology databases. They are alive, conscious, and apparently stranded. Marcus's first instinct is survival, both his and theirs. The larger ethical question of first contact, of planetary protocols, of the cascading geopolitical consequences of discovering intelligent alien life becomes secondary to the immediate crisis. These beings are failing. Their movements are sluggish, their bioluminescence dimming. The smaller one, positioned between 2 slightly larger siblings, trembles visibly. His decades of discipline crack open. Instead of returning to the station to report through proper channels, Marcus rigged together a portable heat shelter using station equipment, insulated the creatures as best he could, and brought them back to the facility under cover of a deliberately triggered equipment malfunction that created authentic-looking sensor noise masking his unauthorized detour. Now, 3 days later, Marcus, in the sealed isolation chamber of the station's medical bay, watching the 3 beings, he's taken to calling them Meridian, Indigo, Ash, and asked on their color patterns gradually recover from whatever ordeal brought them Earth's surface. They communicate through a combination of tactile contact and bioluminescent flashing, a language without sound that Marcus intuitively grasps better than words ever allowed him. The smaller one, Ash, has bonded with him most directly, often reaching toward his face with those delicate membraned hands, studying his features with what seems like compassionate curiosity. They've consumed the high-protein, high-mineral paste Marcus synthesized from station supplies, and their movements have regained fluidity. He's managed to keep them stable without alerting anyone to their presence. The station's other staff members remain oblivious, convinced that managing a delicate sensor calibration issue that requires isolation protocols. The core problem crystallizes on the 4th day. A routine communication from the Global Environmental Council's regional director announces an inspection visit scheduled for 2 weeks' time. The director, Dr. Lynn Okoye, is thorough, exacting, and deeply committed to protocol. She will conduct a full systems audit, review all personnel and resource logs, and her inspection will certainly uncover evidence of Marcus's improvisation. The creatures cannot remain hidden that long. Neither can they survive outside the carefully maintained environmental conditions of the medical bay. Marcus realizes with a clarity that surprises him that he is now bound to these beings by something deeper than scientific curiosity or even basic compassion. They have somehow reached into the cynical, careful shell he constructed over decades and reminded him of something he'd forgotten he was capable of feeling: responsibility that transcends self-interest. The question that keeps Marcus awake during the long Arctic nights is not how to help the creatures. That seems clear now. But whether he is willing to sacrifice the only sanctuary he has found to do so. Bringing them into the light of official knowledge means accountability, scrutiny, and almost certainly separation from them as they're transferred to research facilities, government agencies, and diplomatic channels beyond his influence. It means his role transforms from protector to witness, an uncomfortable position for a man who has spent his life maintaining careful distance from consequence. Inciting incident: initial encounter, 1,500 words. The turning point arrives not through Marcus's decision, but through an inadvertent discovery. One of the station's engineers, Kai Dmitrov, enters the sealed section of the medical bay without authorization. Technically he has access, but he needs no legitimate reason to be there. He's searching for diagnostic equipment he suspects Marcus has requisitioned for undisclosed purposes, and his search is rewarded with a view through the observation window of ash reaching toward Marcus, its bioluminescence creating patterns that pulse like a heartbeat made visible. Kai is not unkind, but he is efficient and loyal to protocol in a way Marcus can no longer afford to be. The discovery forces an immediate crisis. Marcus has perhaps 6 hours before Kai reports the incident through proper channels, triggering a cascade of investigations that will remove the creatures from Marcus's care and likely result in his arrest for violations of planetary security and contamination protocols. He chooses transparency before compulsion, calling an emergency meeting with Kai in a station commons room where they cannot be overheard by surveillance systems, which malfunction frequently in this region. One advantage of running a remote facility is that maintenance logs are flexible when necessary. What Marcus explains to Kai over the next 2 hours is not just the existence of the aliens, but the nature of his encounter with them. He describes their failure to communicate through sound, the sophistication evident in their social bonding, and most critically, the singular fact that has consumed his thoughts. Meridian, during one of their tactile contact sessions, transmitted something directly into his consciousness. Not words precisely, but a cascade of images and emotions: a vast starship damaged in Earth's upper atmosphere, an emergency descent that scattered the 3 siblings across the region, the survival imperative that drove them to shelter in the valley where Marcus found them. The transmission was neither hostile nor demanding. It was an act of trust so fundamental that Marcus understood the creatures were not attempting to communicate with humanity as a species, but specifically with him, the individual who had chosen their survival over protocol. Kai's response surprises Marcus with its complexity. The engineer is not shocked or horrified, but thoughtful, contemplative in a way that suggests his loyalty to protocol exists within a larger, ethical framework Marcus had underestimated. Kai shares that his grandmother was part of the last major refugee crisis of the 2040s, that his family's survival depended on people like Marcus, individuals willing to risk institutional disapproval for basic humanity. The protocol exists, Kai acknowledges, to prevent exploitation and biological contamination. But it also exists in a context of historical human fear and suspicion. The question Kai poses is not whether the aliens are real or dangerous, but whether the protocol was designed to protect humanity or control first contact for political purposes. Kai proposes a solution that adds a crucial complication to Marcus's situation. They will document everything: medical data, communication patterns, environmental needs, the full record of Marcus's interaction with the creatures, and simultaneously initiate a upload to the global academic network before official channels can suppress or control the information. It's a gambit that violates security protocols, but accomplishes something critical. It transforms the creatures from a classified incident into a known fact with multiple independent witnesses and documented evidence. The institutional response becomes far more complicated when billions of people worldwide have simultaneous access to proof of alien intelligence. Yet this action creates a new moral weight for Marcus to carry. By democratizing knowledge of the aliens, he has also exposed them to billions of hypothetical opinions, fears, and desires. Governments will mobilize. Religious organizations will fracture along new theological lines. Corporations will see intellectual property and resource extraction opportunities. Scientists will demand access and study. Within 24 hours of Ka upload, the station receives 3 separate emergency communications. One from the Governmental Council demanding Marcus's cooperation and custody of the aliens, another from an international coalition of xenobiology researchers seeking observational access, from an organization Marcus doesn't yet recognize but which identifies itself as the New Planetary Alliance, a coalition of developing nations concerned about equitable treatment of alien species and demanding a formal diplomatic council before any research proceeds. The fourth communication is the most unsettling. It comes through a secure channel that should not quantum encrypted message from someone's only as archive. The message states Marcus found the first to contact, that their presence hypotheses longitudinal science, and that their survival depends on making a choice. He can hand them over to establities and watch as they become experimental subjects in a research fundamentally designed without their ends in mind, or he can help reach a location on Earth's surface where they either their vessel or access safe houses maintained by an underground movement dedicated to protection regardless of species origin. Archive's message provides coordinates in the Himalayas and a single additional piece of information. Marcus's actions in the past 72 hours have been monitored by multiple factions, none of them official government agencies. He is not alone in his defiance of protocol, but neither is he safe. Marcus stands in the medical bay watching ash create patterns on the translucent polymer walls fluid. Beautiful designs that contain information he doesn't fully decode, but which convey something like gratitude and affection. Meridian and Indigo rest in the heated corner, their bioluminescence dimmed to conservation levels. He realizes that the decision tree has collapsed into a single terrifying branch. He cannot protect them by following the system, because the system contains no provisions for their protection. He can only protect them by breaking every promise he made when he accepted employment at a facility built on the assumption of human sovereignty over planetary access. The choice, paradoxically, is also the clearest choice he's ever faced. Rising conflict, 2,000 words. The extraction begins at midnight, coordinated by Kai and a contact Kai has maintained since childhood. A woman named Yuki who works in atmospheric logistics for a private transport consortium. The plan itself is elegant in its simplicity. The station is evacuated for an emergency environmental crisis, a methanogenic anomaly that poses no actual threat but triggers automatic protocol, and in the chaos of coordinated departures, a special cargo transport lands on the secondary runway. Equipment is rapidly transferred, and Marcus departs with 3 aliens in a refrigerated container labeled as biological research samples for transport to a processing facility in Whitehorse. The first 72 hours of flight test Marcus's capacity for deception in ways his previous isolation never required. He must maintain calm presence while the aircraft is monitored by multiple government agencies trying to determine the legitimacy of the emergency evacuation. He must ensure the creature's environmental stability. While the transport bounces through Arctic wind shear, he must read Meridian's increasingly frantic bioluminescent patterns. The three siblings are distressed by the flight, communicating with each other in rapid chromatic flashes that Marcus senses carrier and uncertainty. Yet beneath their distress, he begins to perceive something else. A sense of direction, as if they are orienting toward a destination beyond his comprehension. Yuki provides him with new identification documents, a safe house in Edmonton, and a warning. The Global Environmental Council has initiated a manhunt, framing Marcus as a potential bioterror threat, which provides legal justification for cross-border pursuit. More concerningly, several private security contractors have begun independent tracking operations, suggesting that commercial interests are now invested in locating the aliens. Archives Organization has provided protection at the Edmonton Safe House, and a guide named Solomon, a human who has apparently been working with the Resistance Network for over a decade. Solomon is younger than Marcus expected, perhaps 30. With the weathered competence of someone who has lived outside official structures long enough to develop genuine alternative expertise. Solomon explains the broader context, while Marcus helps the three aliens adjust to their temporary shelter, a renovated basement of an apparently architectural firm in downtown Edmonton. The Resistance Network, Solomon reveals, has been tracking anomalous patterns for 15 years. Unusual energy signatures near major population centers, gravitational disturbances inconsistent with natural phenomena, and most tellingly, recurring encounters between indigenous peoples and beings whose descriptions align with known animal species. The global power structures have maintained careful silence on these phenomena, largely because acknowledging them requires restructuring fundamental assumptions about human planetary dominance. Several governments have even maintained classified research programs, attempting to develop technology through reverse engineering of materials recovered from crashed vessels. Into this hidden landscape, Marcus has tumbled with three aliens who are apparently not anomalies, but refugees survivors of a ship traveling through human space, seeking assistance after catastrophic systems failure. The next crisis emerges from within Meridian, the largest of the triplets. The alien's bioluminescence begins to show patterns of irregular flashing, and when Marcus makes tactile contact, he receives an overwhelming sensory burst, systemic degradation, cellular processes failing. Solomon recognizes the symptoms immediately. The creatures require something beyond basic thermal and nutritional support, something their physiology cannot obtain from Earth-standard biological resources. One of Meridian's internal systems is failing, and without intervention, the alien will die within a week. Solomon produces a communication device and contacts Archive, resulting in a grim conversation about medical access that will require Marcus to venture outside the safe house and make contact with an underground medical facility that maintains specialized equipment to treat non-human physiology. The facility itself, located in the basement of a legitimate hospital in Calgary, presents Marcus with his first direct confrontation with organized resistance that extends far beyond personal ethics into institutional defiance. A physician named Dr. Amara runs the facility, with approximately 15 support staff, all of them apparently committed to providing medical care, regardless of the patient's origin or legal status. Dr. Amara explains, while running diagnostics on Meridian, that the underground medical network has been operating for approximately 8 years. They have treated 17 previously discovered alien entities, and that they maintain relationships with sympathetic medical professionals wide through secure communications networks. The revelation that he is not unique have been making similar choice across multiple nations and contexts fundamentally alters Marcus's understanding of his own position. He is not a lone defiant individual, but a node in a distributed resistance movement at scales, and with sophistication suggests genuine institutional capability. Meridian's condition requires a 3-day treatment cycle using specialized equipment that synthesizes compounds from Meridian's own cellular samples, thusly accelerating the body's natural repair mechanisms to address the systemic failure. During those 3 days, Marcus remains at the facility, and Dr. Amara shares the larger context of her work. She describes encounters with 6 distinct non-human species, multiple instances of crashed vessels, and evidence suggesting that Earth has been a known waypoint for traveling civilizations for at least 2 centuries. Governments and corporations have exploited this knowledge to develop technological capabilities decades beyond public science, while simultaneously maintaining the necessary legal and cultural fictions of human sovereignty. The aliens Marcus found are not unique precisely because they are unique. They are refugees from a larger conflict in the broader galaxy that humanity has been deliberately kept ignorant about, nominally for protection, but practically for control and profit. During the treatment, Solomon brings Marcus troubling news. The Global Environmental Council has formally charged him with treason for violating sanitary quarantine protocols and endangering all human life through biological contamination. More immediately, private security forces have narrowed his location and are mobilizing to intercept him. The resistance network can provide transport, but it requires a decision. Marcus can attempt to reach the coordinates archive provided in the Himalayas, a location where archive claims the aliens can access repairs or resources to facilitate departure Earth, or he can allow himself to be captured, which would buy time for Solomon and Dr. Amara to coordinate evacuation of the medical facility before it is compromised. The choice mirrors his earlier crisis, but with greater stakes. His personal sacrifice now potentially protects dozens of people and a larger infrastructure of resistance. Marcus chooses movement. Meridian emerges, treatment weakened but stable, the cellular repair process incomplete but functional enough for travel. The final segment of the journey requires moving from Canadian infrastructure into the American wilderness, then through Mexico, and eventually through Colombia toward South America's cloud forests and the eventual mountain approaches to the Himalayas. It is a journey measured in weeks, constrained by the creature's limited mobility, complicated by the need to remain undetected, and punctuated by moments of genuine intimacy between Marcus and the 3 aliens as their communication deepens beyond bioluminescent patterns into something closer to mutual linguistic understanding. Indigo, the middle triplet, begins teaching Marcus sequences almost musical, almost mathematical, that the aliens use to encode complex information. Marcus, through a combination of intuitive mimicry and focused concentration, begins to grasp fundamental concepts: the nature of their vessel and its propulsion, the political situation that forced them to travel through human space, the conflict that is apparently consuming much of the known galaxy beyond Earth's awareness. He learns that their civilization spans multiple star systems, that various species maintain tense coexistence through a complex system of territorial agreements and resource distribution protocols, and that Earth itself is designated as a protected observation zone specifically because of its biological complexity and evolutionary potential. The presence of the triplets on Earth's surface is, in some sense, a violation. Refugees from a conflict that should never have touched human space, seeking shelter on a world whose inhabitants are nominally restricted from full cosmic awareness. Yet with this knowledge comes a deeper understanding of what ash, indigo, and meridian represent. They are not seeking to hide or to harm. They carry information, cultural memory, and a perspective on humanity that is simultaneously humbling and affirming. Through their communication, Marcus understands that humanity is not unique in its ethical struggles, that other species grapple with similar questions of responsibility and survival, that the universe contains far more complexity and far more tragedy than human isolation permits people to acknowledge. By protecting the triplets, he is not just saving 3 individuals. He is asserting that human ethical capacity extends beyond species boundaries, that the isolation imposed by protocol can be transcended through genuine connection. Climax 2,000 words. The safe house in the cloud forests of southern Colombia becomes Marcus's final refuge before the actual confrontation. Archive finally reveals the full scope of the operation through a holographic projection transmitted to a secure communication terminal. The coordinates in the Himalaya facility maintained by an international coalition of researchers, philosophers, and activists collectively known as the Collective, an organization that has been operating since the 1990s to preserve and protect alien visitors, while simultaneously accumulating evidence of humanity's hidden integration into larger cosmic structures. The Collective is not a resistance movement in the traditional sense. It is more accurately described as a repository of suppressed knowledge and an underground railroad for non-human refugees. Within its network are scientists from every major research institution, government officials from dozens of countries, indigenous leaders whose peoples maintained oral traditions of non-human contact spanning centuries, and apparently, several entities from other species who have chosen to advocate for expanded human participation in galactic affairs. The location itself is not technically in the Himalayas, but beneath them, a series of caverns that were discovered during geological surveys in the 1950s and have been substantially developed as autonomous infrastructure operating outside any nation's official jurisdiction. Archive provides coordinates, access codes, and a deadline. The Collective is organizing a formal diplomatic process designed to bring Earth into greater awareness of cosmic realities, and the triplets' arrival has accelerated the timeline significantly. The private security forces pursuing Marcus are not government agents, but operatives of a corporate consortium attempting to capture the aliens for technological reverse engineering. Official governments, meanwhile, are beginning to coordinate their own response. And within 48 hours, multiple nations will likely initiate military action to secure the triplets or eliminate them as a potential security threat. The window for safe passage to the Collective's location is approximately 36 hours, and the route requires traversing some of Earth's most challenging terrain without detection. Solomon coordinates a final transport, a small aircraft that carries Marcus and the 3 aliens through weather systems that would typically prevent flying. Piloted, one Solomon calls the Phantom, a smuggler who has apparently been moving refugee cargo across borders for longer than Marcus has been alive. The flight is turbulent, disorienting, and during one particularly violent descent through a storm front, Ash makes direct physical contact with Marcus while their bioluminescent patterns synchronize into patterns that feel almost like prayer. The alien transmits something profound and wordless, something like forgiveness, like understanding, like the kind of unconditional connection that might exist between parent and child. Though Marcus knows Ash is not his offspring, cannot be in any biological sense, yet the emotional resonance is undeniable, and Marcus understands that the relationship he has formed with the 3 beings transcends categories of species or kinship. The approach to the Himalayan facility occurs in darkness, with the aircraft circling an apparently blank mountainside until suddenly a section of rock face becomes permeable. revealing an opening illuminated by bioluminescent markers that match the color patterns the triplets create. The descent into the cavern system is a movement into a reality that operates by different rules, vast chambers that contain multiple ecosystems, artificial structures built from materials that don't clearly conform to human manufacturing standards, and most stunning of all, the presence of multiple non-human beings moving through this with the casual familiarity of people in a well-known city. The being who greets them is humanoid, but distinctly non-human, with features that suggest convergent evolution with multiple branching points. Archive, Marcus realizes, was not metaphorical but literal. This entity is named Archive, or Archive, is a translation of a designation that contains meaning beyond a simple name. Archive welcomes Marcus and the triplets with a formality that carries genuine affection, and the quality of Archive's tone suggests that Marcus is known here, expected here, meaningful in ways that extend beyond mere logistics. Archive conducts Marcus, Ash, Indigo, and Meridian to a central chamber, where the actual confrontation occurs. Not a physical battle, but a meeting between representatives of the collective's governing council and delegates from Earth's official government structures, who have apparently discovered the facility's location simultaneously, or who have been grudgingly allowed to attend once secrecy became impossible. The human delegation includes the director of the Global Environmental Council, several military strategists, and surprisingly, Dr. Helena Okoye, the environmental scientist who was scheduled to inspect Marcus's station. She is here not as an adversary, but as an advocate, her expression carrying complex emotion when she recognizes Marcus. The conflict that erupts is not between Marcus and the officials within the collective itself. Several members argue that Marcus's protection of the triplets has created unacceptable risks to the organization's existence, that the direct confrontation with government authorities has compromised decades of careful coordination and secrecy. Others argue that this is precisely the moment the organization has been preparing for, the opportunity to force genuine human participation in cosmic awareness, rather than continued isolation masquerading as protection. The triplets themselves participate in this debate through Archive, their bioluminescent patterns, and the formal translations Archive provides, articulating a position that moves Marcus to profound respect. The triplets speaking through Archive refuse to be evacuated to safety beyond Earth's reach. They argue that their escape vessel, while damaged, can be repaired with assistance, but they claim no moral right to that assistance if they don't simultaneously advocate for Earth's incorporation into the larger galactic community. They present evidence of Earth's capacity for moral reasoning, its artistic and technological sophistication, and most crucially, they reference their direct experience with Marcus, a human who chose profound personal sacrifice for beings of a different species who risked everything rather than permit institutional convenience to override ethical responsibility. They argue that humanity deserves to make its own choices about its cosmic role, that continued imposed isolation is ultimately a form of ethical violation, regardless of supposedly protective intent. The confrontation becomes heated. Military strategists argue that premature disclosure will destabilize international relations and potentially trigger violence. Corporate interests argue that equitable treatment of the aliens will create problematic precedents for resources distribution and intellectual property. Yet Dr. Okoye stands and articulates something that shifts the entire conversation. She describes what she has learned from her own investigation's actions, the pattern of consistent ethical reasoning that guided every she made, and she argues that if you not provide asylum to 3 refugees from cosmic conflict, then humanity the isolation it has been given, and that continued pretense of moral evolution is precisely hypocrisy that will eventually trigger a catastrophic consequence the imposed isolation was meant to prevent. The resolution, not as unanimous agreement, but as acknowledged necessity. Official representatives agree to coordinate with the collective toward gradual, managed disclosure of cosmic realities, beginning with public acknowledgement of the triplets' presence, proceeding through careful information about other species and existing treaties, ultimately transitioning toward formal inclusion of Earth in galactic diplomatic and trade structures. The triplets' vessel will be repaired with assistance from the collective, but the beings themselves will remain on Earth for an extended period, serving as diplomatic liaisons and helping to facilitate the transition process. Marcus is offered a position as one of humanity's representatives in this new framework, a role he hesitantly accepts, understanding that the isolation he sought in the Arctic is ending, but that something potentially more meaningful is beginning. Yet the climax carries genuine moral ambiguity. Several nations withdraw from the agreement. Several religious institutions declare the existence of other species, and financial markets destabilize as the implications of contact begin to register. Most critically, Archive shares that the larger galactic conflict that forced the triplets into human space is approaching, that Earth will inevitably be drawn into cosmic politics whether humanity is ready or not, and that the protection of isolation was always temporary. By choosing connection, by choosing to protect Ash, Indigo and Meridian, Marcus and the collective have not prevented future conflict, but may have accelerated it. The ethical victory is real, but the practical consequences are terrifying. Resolution 1,000 words. 6 months after the formal disclosure, the world exists in a state of profound transition that none of the stability Marcus might have anticipated. The initial panic phase has largely subsided, replaced by a complex mixture of curiosity, anxiety, opportunism, and genuine philosophical reckoning about humanity's place in a populated cosmos. 3 distinct factions have emerged within Earth's political landscape: those embracing the expanded cosmic perspective and advocating for rapid integration, those resisting contact as existential threat and attempting to impose isolation protocols, and those attempting to navigate the middle ground of cautious engagement with maintained sovereignty. Marcus finds himself living in a peculiar liminal space, occupying a facility that is simultaneously Earth's first official diplomatic institute and functionally an extension of the collective's underground network. His days are consumed with translation work between human officials and the collective's representatives, cultural coordination for the expanding number of non-human beings choosing to remain on Earth, and surprisingly, genuine scientific research into the fundamental questions of consciousness, language, and ethics that contact has crystallized. The triplets have established a formal residence in the same facility, and while Meridian and Indigo spend significant time in diplomatic functions and cultural exchange programs, Ash maintains a consistent focus on collaborative learning with Marcus. Their communication has evolved beyond bioluminescent patterns into something that involves shared dreams, a phenomenon that Dr. Amara documents with genuine scientific rigor. While acknowledging that fundamental aspects of the experience resist conventional neurological explanation, Dr. Okoye has become an unexpected ally and friend. She regularly visits the facility and has been instrumental in coordinating the environmental protocols necessary to maintain sustainable life support for the visiting non-human species. She shares with Marcus her own reckoning with the discovery of the larger universe, the realization that her lifetime of environmental advocacy, while meaningful, occurred within a context of profound ignorance about planetary significance and cosmic ecology. Together they begin work on a research project examining Earth's place in galactic biological preservation. A study that suggests Earth's evolutionary uniqueness makes it valuable not as a resource to be exploited, but as a living archive, protecting for reasons that transcend economic value. Solomon remains with the collective, but increasingly in diplomatic capacities rather than resistance operations. The organization is undergoing significant transformation, that secrecy is no longer necessary, and Solomon navigates the tension between maintaining the collective's historical commitment to marginal populations and adapting to its new prominence in official structures. He and Marcus maintain their connection through regular communications, and Solomon shares periodic updates about the ongoing efforts to assist other alien refugees who contact the network, as well as the growing movement among Earth's population advocating for formal asylum and integration policies regarding extraterrestrial visitors. The complications, however, persist in ways that prevent any clean sense of victory or resolution. The corporate consortium that pursued Marcus initially has not dispersed. Instead, it has adapted, working through government channels to acquire rights to alien technology and to secure lucrative contracts for cultural liaison services. Simultaneously, the resistance to contact has become increasingly organized and occasionally violent. There have been 3 incidents of attacked diplomatic delegations, sabotage of communication systems, and assassination attempts against prominent advocates for integration. Most troublingly, intelligence from the collective suggests that the larger galactic conflict archive referenced has indeed escalated, that military forces from multiple species are maneuvering closer to human space, and that Earth's admission into broader cosmic awareness may have inadvertently made it a target for species seeking territorial advantage or strategic positioning. Yet beneath these complications, something genuinely transformative has occurred in Earth's collective consciousness. The discovery that humanity is not alone, that other species demonstrate ethics and complexity comparable to human civilization, has triggered a surprising wave of solidarity across traditional human dividing lines. Indigenous peoples whose traditional knowledge of cosmic contact is now validated have become prominent voices in diplomatic contexts. Religious institutions, after the initial crisis period, have largely reconciled the existence of other species with theological frameworks. Many traditions discovering that expanded cosmic awareness actually deepens rather than challenges spiritual understanding. Most importantly, the visibility of direct consequences flowing from Marcus's initial choice to protect the triplets has become a touchstone in moral philosophy, with his actions used as a reference point for discussions about transcending institutional constraints in service of higher ethical commitments. The collective formally recognizes Marcus as an honorary member, a designation that comes with responsibilities he didn't anticipate and significance that sometimes feels disproportionate to his actual contributions. Yet he understands the symbolic power. A human who chose exile from his own species' institutional structures to protect aliens, who proved that ethical reasoning could function across biological boundaries, becomes a representative of human capacity for moral growth. When a delegation from a species called the Katuri arrives on Earth with proposals for a joint research initiative exploring fundamental questions of consciousness and ethics, they specifically request Marcus as a coordinator, understanding apparently that his approach to knowledge carries a particular orientation toward collaboration that transcends species difference. In quiet moments, Marcus often stands in the observation chamber of the diplomatic facility, watching Ash create light patterns on the cavern walls, while Indigo and Meridian communicate with Archive and other visiting entities about matters Marcus increasingly recognizes as beyond his full comprehension. He reflects on the trajectory carried him from Arctic isolation to cosmic liaison, from a man avoiding consequence to someone who has become defined by embracing it. The safety he sought in the North has been replaced by a different kind of refuge, Not isolation but connection. Not separation but participation in something genuinely unprecedented in human history. Epilogue Sikil Hook, 5 Zzer words. 2 years after Marcus' initial discovery of the triplets, Earth has been formally integrated into a Concord, a diplomatic structure that theoretically governs interactions between 17 known sapient species. Though Marcus has learned that known carries significant qualification, the integration process has proven more disruptive than even the pessimistans suggested, but it has also generated unexpected benefits. Technology transfers that accelerated Earth's medical capabilities, culture changes that fundamentally altered human understanding of art and philosophy, and most significantly, genuine friendships between humans and visiting species that suggest ethical connection does indeed transcend biological origin. The asteroid detection system that Marcus had been monitoring in the Arctic has been repurposed as part of Earth's contribution to galactic defense infrastructure. The irony is not lost on him that the isolated research station he sought to avoid human complexity has become a critical node in a larger defense system against cosmic threats humanity previously didn't acknowledge. Dr. Okoye splits her time between environmental work focused on Earth's preservation and collaborative research with Kittery scientists studying how multiple worlds might coordinate ecological management across light years. Yet troubling information emerges from archive during a private conversation with Marcus. The faction within the larger galactic community that opposed Earth's rapid integration is not satisfied with the current diplomatic arrangement. Rumors suggest that some forces view Earth's unique biological heritage not as something to protect, but as something to control, possibly to exploit. More critically, archive reveals that the vessel carrying the triplets was not technically a refugee ship, but a research vessel conducting observations about human development, and that the accident, forcing descent into Earth's atmosphere, may not have been entirely accidental. The implication that the triplets' arrival was potentially orchestrated to force exactly the kind of disclosure that has now occurred raises profound questions about who is truly driving the expansion of human cosmic awareness, and whether the choices Marcus has celebrated were genuinely his own or elements of a larger plan he has yet to fully comprehend. Archive shares that the Concord's governance structure is itself unstable, with multiple species maneuvering for advantage, and that at Earth's unique position newly emerged, ethically uncertain, strategically valuable makes it a focus of increasingly intense political attention. Ash, speaking directly to Marcus in their private sessions, confirms Archive's concerns but articulates a perspective that carries transcendent weight. Whether the triplets' arrival was accident or orchestration, whether forces beyond Marx's knowledge have guided recent events, the ethical commitments he made were and remain genuine. The protection of the vulnerable, the choice to act against institutional constraint in service of connection, these choices possess moral weight regardless of larger contexts. Yet Ash also warns that significant challenges approach, that factions within the Concord are preparing moves that will test whether humans can maintain their newfound ethical commitment when facing genuine threat, and that Marcus and the community he has helped create may need to make choices even more costly than the initial protection of the triplets. As Marcus stands once more in the observation chamber, watching Ash create complex patterns of light that somehow encode both greeting and warning, he understands that his journey has only truly begun. The isolation of the Arctic was an ending. The confrontation with the triplets was an awakening. But the true narrative, the one that will define not just his own life, potentially the trajectory of human history, remains unwritten, waiting in the spaces between stars for the next crisis, the next choice, the opportunity to prove whether humanity possesses the ethical depth necessary to thrive in a populated universe.